Something that's not talked about enough in the industry is
you get burned out.
You're a pretty screwed up individual that is unbelievably buttoned up and put together.
That was something that happened to me.
We are all human beings.
I actually have a chance now to understand how to be a better parent.
You don't have to talk to a person to get your whole job site off the ground and going.
My daughter, she can sniff out the AI instantly.
They're not your country.
I told Anna, I was like, we're going to see real quick who runs a good restaurant.
Doesn't matter if it's golf or cooking, you will get results when you love what you do.
This is Live on the Clubhouse with Charley Bolak. Howdy, swingers. Charley Bolak here, founder of Swing Away Golf Club and host of the Clubhouse podcast. I want to tell a little story as we get going here about what happened to me the first morning in our new house here. If you're following along with everything we're putting out, we moved, let's see, was it last Wednesday? So this would have been last Thursday morning. It was 6:45 in the morning. I had one of my boys in the car on the way to take him to daycare. You know, we weren't maybe 600 yards, down the road from leaving the new house. My brain is just out there on, new house, old house, boxes, daycare, swing away. What had I forgotten? What had to happen next? And of course, I hadn't had my coffee yet. Lately I've been working personally on what I call signal to noise ratio. I didn't coin the term, but it's signal to noise ratio. Some people can function with a very high noise ratio, meaning distractions in their life. They can still get their stuff done. They can still find the signal in all that noise and continue to go. The signal is basically what needs to be done. Their task is, think about it that way. Their task is the signal. Stop treating every piece of information, every notification, every problem, every thought as equally important. Find the signal, the thing that actually matters right now. So the way I'm doing it is kind of as I go, I'll have an idea of what tasks I need to be, how I have them prioritized, and I won't let anything get in my way. The goal will be to have this set of tasks done before lunch, and that's where I even look at, I've got an idea of what tasks need to be done after lunch, but I haven't prioritized them. I haven't set about how to efficiently maximize the effort in getting them done. It's a pretty sharp irony in what happened. I was using a lot of my brain's processing power, thinking about how to better use my brain's processing power. My body was driving down Broadway and my mind was moving houses, running a business, planning the day, trying to become more productive. And then suddenly a cyclist was right in front of me. He was, crossing from whatever left side he was riding on to off kind of in a neighborhood. And I assume this is pretty common practice in the area. I've since talked to a couple of people that say, cyclists are everywhere. And that was just, hey, that's on me. I didn't think about it. We both reacted. We both got scared. Thankfully, nothing happened. He probably had the right of way. The honest truth is that I wasn't looking for a cyclist to be there at 6:45 in the morning before I'd had my first, sip of coffee or any caffeine for that matter. But that's an explanation, not an excuse, right? He didn't have to know where my head was, what kind of morning I was having. It was my responsibility to be aware of my surroundings enough to know that hey, there's a cyclist right here. What am I going to do if all of a sudden he decides he's going that way? My accident chain, it started early in the morning, maybe even the night before, maybe even with the whole move, and in previous episodes, we talked about in level ups and in moving, you can do so much to prepare. And I was talking to Anna, and it did feel like there was a lot of front end work. Now, what I guess didn't portend was that whereas my previous history was moving 2,500 square foot house with mostly Anna and I's stuff, as very young parents to a 2-year-old and maybe one just born or very, very young when we moved the last time anyway. And we just didn't have as much stuff. It wasn't quite as stressful. I did all the packing as kind of how our history has been, but it wasn't near the amount of stuff, the scale of the operation was kind of underestimated again on my part. And if you follow along and listen, underestimating things is kind of a trend of mine. How long is it going to take me to pressure wash the driveway? How long is it going to take me to build these 7 planters and fill them with compost? It's all these different things going on. And, for one brief moment on Broadway, those two paths intersected, and thankfully, they didn't connect, crossed just on a different plane of existence. And that's what kind of stays with me, and I'm sure with him too. I mean, I think we both probably had to get where we were going and check our britches, make sure that we didn't have to go back home and shower again. In aviation, the FAA says that error chain recognition, the NTSB investigates transportation accidents, gathering facts, analyzing conditions and decisions, determining probable cause, and recommending safety improvements. The point is not merely to name the last person who touched the chain. The point is to find the links that could have been broken. And really, the more I thought about it, in the days, subsequent, the more I realize that mistake chains are everywhere. They happen in business when one vague promise becomes a messy deal. They happen in parenting when fatigue, distraction, assumptions, and one small incident turns into something much bigger. They happen in golf when one bad swing becomes a bad decision, then another bad decision, and suddenly, you got a snowman on the scorecard. I'm notorious for that. It's not necessarily a 10 cup thing. I won't sit there and try the same shot over and over because I know deep down in my head I can get it there. I mean, I may know deep down in my head I can get it there, but it's taking the medicine, right? It's realizing that the first mistake may be unavoidable, but the chain that follows often is not. It often starts with smaller mistakes that build and build and build. What would never be thought of as a mistake outside of that particular chain that eventually caused an accident all compounds upon itself to get you to, as I had a professor at Auburn say, that all this leads up to get you to the crash site, and that's, it's a brutal truth, but that's what it is. It's all these things lead to, the incident that spurred the investigation in the first place. Talking about the signal noise, the signal changes, depending on the moment. At work, the signal may be the customer, the contract, the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud. At home, the signal may be the child trying to tell you something while your phone's ringing, your schedule, you've got emails, calls, other things demanding your attention, especially, with kids out for summer. Maybe you don't have the same parameters for sending them to daycare. Hey, he wakes up a little tired. You don't have necessarily the most packed schedule that day. So you say, hey, you know what? You stay out of school. We'll have some fun today. And then you get busy at work, and part of you is just like, why did I do this? Why did I do this to myself? How did I bring this on? But it's always what we do once we're in these situations, how we react, how we get back kind of to center line and have that decompression thought of, hey, this could have been a lot worse. This is how I'm going to think about avoiding this in the future. So on the signal to noise, behind the wheel, the signal is the road. Everything else has to be noise. I cannot be using that much of my processing power on thinking of how to process better. That can run in the background, right, for all you computer people. I'm not good enough at it yet to know that, or know where that is or how that's done. So that is something that I will work on in my personal journey. And to the cyclists that I scared on Broadway, I'm sorry. If this episode somehow finds you, come see me at Swing Away. We'll have a talk about it, have hopefully an uncomfortable laugh about it, and your first beer is on me. I mean, not because a beer erases the moment, but because ownership should have a next step. This episode is about mistakes, not pretending we can eliminate them, not defending them, and not allowing one mistake to define us forever. It's about finding our link in the chain, owning it, learning from it, and breaking the chain before it becomes something we can't undo. I know a lot about that, so tune into the episode. It's going to be a great one. We're talking about mistakes.
Here's what people don't tell you about leveling up. If you want to move from this
to this. You got to do a whole lot of work in between like this. You got to keep these places up to keep them ready. A lot of people pay for it, but if you want to have your money working for you, it's elbow grease, baby. Are you ready? If you value hard work, enjoy golf, and want to hear about leveling up, moving, parenting, stuff that I have real world experience with, give us a listen at the Clubhouse podcast. Find us on YouTube or Spotify today. And as always, come and see us at Swing Away Golf Club. Practice, play, win. All right. Howdy, folks. Welcome back. Charley Bolak here. This is the Clubhouse podcast. Episode is mistakes, and our business segment is taking ownership of a messy deal. Classic, right? We've all done it. I mean, even back in my restaurant days, I forget to ring something in, and man, I don't know what's taking the kitchen so long tonight, or hey, sorry, we're really shorthanded back there tonight. We've all had those moments where you kind of think about taking the blame or how you're going to pass it on, and sometimes we make the wrong decision, right? And that is a mistake. Ownership's easy when the result is good. It's my customer, it's my project, my sale, my idea. When the result gets ugly, when it's a tough deal, something's gone wrong, our language suddenly changes. They, operations, the vendor, the customer. Taking ownership, it doesn't mean accepting the blame for every mistake, but it definitely means injecting yourself to where you could have stopped it from being the mistake that it was, right? Recently, we had a sales rep change positions or change companies in the middle of one of our deals through a manufacturer, and we just kind of rock along thinking the deal's good, and we get a couple weeks out, start trying to check on things, can't get in touch with people, hard to get answers, and about a week later, when we finally get to the bottom of what's going on, there's a lead time problem with a major component. So the pumps are ready to be manufactured. There's everything sitting there except this one major component that you could do some work of the assembly outside of it, but it's really there's not much you can do because this component makes all the difference, right? It's how you build from there back. And if we would have known this early on, then we would not have found ourselves in this situation of coming to the customer. Hey, Mr. Customer, this is supposed to be your week of delivery, and now I'm going to tell you it's going to be 4, possibly even 6 weeks before we are able to deliver, what we told you we're going to. And my solution, right, was to go to the customer and say, hey, this is on me. Not that I let this major component slip through the cracks or anything, but what I didn't do was continue my, follow up with the vendor enough to know that, hey, the guy I was with is no longer with the company. I need to get with them, follow up, see where my deal is, right? Because somebody is going to have to take over all of his stuff, right? And hopefully this wasn't his only deal, right? So there's some pieces to pick up and some communication to loop everybody through. And if I was the squeaky wheel and all that, I probably would have gotten some grease a lot earlier than I did. So why not make that the center focus of the customer rather than going, because ultimately if you go, hey, Mr. Customer, the vendors let us down here. Well, you know what, Charley, you brought me that vendor. You sat in this same chair in my office telling me how good this vendor was. So that's going to fall back to you anyway, right? Why not just own it? Say, hey, yes, the vendor did make the mistake, but ultimately the mistake lies with me for not being the squeaky wheel. And I know there's a lot of people that don't want to be that person, and there's ways around it, right? You don't have to be the annoying person that sends 50 emails a day. Hey, are we going to be on schedule? Hey, are we going to be on schedule? But hey, every week, every other week at least, follow up. Hey, just making sure we're on schedule. Cause if I would have followed up 6 weeks ago, I would have got that email bounce back that said, so-and-so address not recognized or whatever, and thought, okay, well, it's time to go ahead and get involved and figure out where everything is and what's going down. And that would have saved a lot of headache. And it would have, saved a lot of back end work where, me and the guy I'm partnering with on this deal, have had to go, find other options, make some concessions that we wouldn't have had to make otherwise, on a deal. So it's ultimately it falls on us to make sure our deals are progressing correctly. There's a bunch of ways to go to the customer. There's a bunch of things you could say. There's a bunch of blame shifting you could do. We're seeing a lot of that in our personal life. And again, I don't call out anybody on these things. I did call out a guy one time that left me a bad Google review, but I've since had to let that go. It still bothers me. Another subject for another day. Being honest, being forthright, accepting of the blame, is often the easiest, fastest way to put this to bed, because ultimately I expected a lot more upset customer than I got, because what more could he say when can they sit there? Well, yes, they could. And I've been there, done that. They just berate you for a screw up. But, ultimately 90% of the people that you do business with are going to understand, because they've seen it. They've been through it. They just want to hear that you picked up a little bit of a lesson. Say, hey, this won't happen again because this is how I'm going to do the next deal. And that resonates with people. They appreciate the honesty, and they will stick with you more times than not, and they'll cut you a lot more slack than you ever think that they would. So a couple of points to kind of recap on there. A messy deal rarely begins as a disaster, right? It kind of builds, it becomes one through, a sequence, optimism, assumptions, vague promises, incomplete documentation, missed check-in, just like we talked about, avoided conversations. When it took a week to get in touch, we knew something was going on. We didn't know how bad it was going to be. And thankfully we did message the customer that, hey, we're having some communication issues. We expect this means there's a problem. Don't know what it is or how bad yet. We'll be in touch. And that's the kind of thing that will make your customer want to do business with you, because he didn't have to track you down to figure out that you were going to miss your delivery date. Now, it was later than we would have liked to have informed the customer, but ultimately we were able to cut it off head on, say, hey, this is the problem, this is where it's at, this is what we expect the resolution to be. And again, anytime you can sandwich these things, good news, bad news, good news, good lesson, bad news, lesson learned, there's so many ways to make these work. And I'm in my personal life, I listen to a lot of Audible, and I'm working on one. It's called Make It Stick. It's how messaging works. And I think these guys are like marketing professors, really well written though. And just, they're easy to talk, or it's easy to listen to. And the message resonates, right? That's what we have to get to with the customer. It is get to a point where he knows in his brain that connection is made, that, hey, yes, there's a problem. Charley's on top of it. I'm on to my next problem because I know he's handling this. And that's ultimately, if you can be that guy, you will keep that customer and you're on to your next deal. Just the way it works. So to tie this into kind of some of the signal to noise stuff that I've been working on, noise in these types of situations would be, blaming, going through old emails and pulling out the fact, well, you said that this would be, well, I'm saying now that's That's not, protecting people, proving who was most wrong, the blame shifting that we talked about, and trying to be the least wrong person in the room. Golly, I told my wife in one of these situations with trying to sell our current house, well, our old house, the house we lived in. It's so. It's to me, somebody who does this for a living, and is not scared to go to somebody and say, hey, this is what's wrong. This is what happened. This is how we got ourselves in this situation. This is how we're going to get ourselves out of this situation. Being able to communicate the signal. I mean, everybody was like, well, he said this, you said that, and there were a couple of things that they would tell my wife, oh, well, Charley said this. And no, Charley absolutely did not. Now, I will say that I don't have the memory that I used to. And if you catch me when my mind's one place and you ask me something, you're going to get probably a different answer than if I were sitting down actually thinking about a question. But I know well enough to say, I did not make that decision. That was not asked to me. That's blame shifting. It's why not just define the problem, skip how we got there, go to how we're going to fix it. And that was one of my leadership. One of the biggest challenges, it is when there was a problem at the branch. Classic for us was to forget, on a $20,000 delivery, 100 pieces, the one piece that would make it all work, the auto start switches or a strainer or and you can do all these things right. But if you miss that one part, if some of these jobs are 2.5, 3 hours away, you lose a guy for a whole day. Just to take that one part, or you find a part dart and pay out the nose. But most of the time, somebody would rather lose a guy that you pay $150 a day as opposed to pay $750 to run it with a part dart. So it's it doesn't matter. How now we will always go back and I think they call them postmortems. I never liked that. I would just say, hey, we're going to look at this and we're going to talk about where we went wrong and how we're going to avoid it. And the key there, especially from the leadership perspective, is to not turn it into a witch hunt of, well, 3 people in the room say you did this. The other 2 guys say they saw you put it in the so, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, what matters is the part didn't get to the customer. We're going to lose a guy, for a day to make that work because we don't want to pay the money. How are we going to, as a group, pull together, get the rest of it done, and then come together afterwards and decide, hey, this is what we're going to do to make sure this doesn't happen in the future. At no point is there this guy specifically left the piece off the truck. He was responsible for it. But what it will build to is this guy will be responsible moving forward, right? If it was not clearly defined before, after that meeting, after that discussion, it was clearly defined. Next time this happens, this is on this person. And it's going to be their responsibility to pick up the pieces, right? To do all the flexing to make everything else work. And that's accountability. And that's how this mindset needs to translate to the trenches for it to work. I think that takes care of business. Stick with us. We'll come back. And we've really built a world-class golf facility here in Birmingham, Alabama. From the 16-foot wide bays to the real Italian leather bar stools, we designed this place with luxury in mind, and I don't think we missed. So whether you're looking to level up your game, have a fun, relaxing evening, or test yourself in one of our leagues or tournaments, do yourself a favor and take a short drive up Lake Shore to experience it for yourself, because I promise you one thing, Swing Away Golf Club is the place to be. Conveniently located off of Lake Shore Drive at 100 Frankfurt Circle, next to Overtime. We
look forward to seeing you soon. Practice, play.
All right, welcome back. Let's talk about parenting, mistakes specifically in parenting. So, Clubhouse podcast, the episode is mistakes. We've all made them, right? Parents live with divided attention, work, dinner, phone, one child talking, another child climbing. The youngest, could start walking at any minute. He can already crawl, fast as the Flash. So it's every day there's something new. There's something you got to be on the lookout for. We're into the dog bowl right now. If he can get a clear line to that thing and take off crawling, and I shudder to think when he's fast enough. Last night I had to run down the hall. Run full speed because he saw me. He knew I was coming for him, and that dog bowl was his signal at the moment. All of this builds, into what could be a physical accident chain, a mental accident chain where, you lose your temper, you're a little, I don't want to say aggressive because it's not, not physically aggressive, but you could be, a little tougher with your kid than you intended to be, right? I think we've all done it. And mistakes, don't have to lead to, a kid falling down the steps, but, one of my chains that recently occurred, and I don't think it was the first night in the new house, but it was relatively quick thereafter. Went up in the middle of the night. Frank had woke up, get him back to sleep, and when I'm coming down, there's a gate at the top of our stairs, just one of the little screw-in gates to the wall, and kids can open it. Teddy can now. So we leave it closed though, because if Ted wakes up in the middle of the night and wants to come down, he's kind of half awake, half asleep. We don't want him. He may have socks on. We don't know. We don't want him to fall down the steps in that half awake sleep. So we keep that gate closed. And there's other purposes for it. If the baby's awake and crawling around, we don't want to have to watch every second and make sure he's not going to just take a flying leap right down the steps. So keep it closed at night. And then, the other night he just materialized in our room, and Anna had asked me if I closed the gate. I said, yeah, I closed the gate when I got Frank. Yeah, absolutely. I have a vivid memory of doing it. But Ted was she's like, how'd you get down? The gate was open. She just kind of gave me the little cross-eyed look, or cut across stare. You know what I'm talking about, when you've made a mistake, and someone else has to witness your mistake. Again, ownership, apology. My apologies to Anna for leaving, and to Teddy for leaving the gate open. But it's that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be a huge falling down the steps. There could have been zero consequence. But you know what? If you don't make that change, then one day the likelihood will continue to increase that one day he's going to fall down those steps. And I guess that's life. So, something easy I can do to prevent something on the back end. What else? Emotional accidents, a hard work day, follows you home, your child spills something, tone gets sharp. Children change the conditions constantly. Yesterday's, reliable routine, may not fit what needs to happen today. We got Ted's sports coming up. He's got a fall soccer season, that'll be starting pretty soon. So we're looking at schedules, seeing how we can kind of adjust what we're doing, seeing if we can staff swing away certain nights to accommodate, soccer, and we want to get him into some other stuff. So it's there's always a lot, going on, and a parenting mistake, it doesn't have to be a big deal. Stop. If you cut across your kid in a snippy way, stop. Say, hey buddy, I didn't mean to do that. It's, I apologize. you can take ownership without making excuses, and really, you don't even have to go into a long drawn out explanation of, oh, daddy's had this and this and this. Just, hey, look, dad just had a bad moment. I apologize. Let's move on. And kids are resilient, and spouses will see that and appreciate it. It's it just doesn't have to become an identity. Put it to bed real quick, acknowledge it, apologize, explain what you're going to do to, like we said, in business, explain what you're going to do to make sure this doesn't happen again, and reconnect, move on. Positive chain works too. A bedtime story, put down a phone at dinner. One patient answer builds upon another. Your kids seeing you, take ownership and apologize, will set an example for them. And it builds a level of emotional trust over time, where I think that the other day, Teddy, I said something, and Teddy was like, "It's okay, Daddy." I was like, "What?" Yeah, he was like, I know you didn't mean to say it like that or something like that, because of the way I would apologize for it before. And it triggered me to stop, and say, hey, absolutely, you're right. That, and again, that was me. That's on me. And it's, hey, it works. So let's see if we can get some signal to noise in here. Noise may be the mess. It may be the spilled drink, the 10th asking of the same question, or just the fact that your head is somewhere else, working on schedules, or working on a budget, or working on anything that, your brain desires to work on at the moment. It's hard to separate sometimes. These electrical things up in our skull, have a mind of their own to a certain extent. It's learning how to kind of control them and hack them and get them to do your bidding without thinking that they're doing your bidding. That's the way we get past some of these, just typical issues. I mean, again, if you every now and then get a little snippy with your kid and you feel bad about it, that makes you a good person, not a bad person for having done it. A great parent for being reflective enough to think, you know what, hey, that probably wasn't the best thing for me to do. That wasn't the best example I could have set for my kid, or I could have done A, B, C, or D. And that's what's important. That's the takeaway. Your children will see you grow. Parenting is a journey in and of itself. It's incredible the change that these kids will have on you and in your life, if you prioritize growing yourself with them. All right. Well, let's take it to golf. I'm excited for golf. I haven't got to play as much with the move, and I'm scared. Well, I played, was it 2 days ago, and I was rusty. I don't understand how you could just go from being as sharp and as dialed in to 3 to 4 days off. Just, and it doesn't take much to get back. It's not like, you build a huge layer of rust in that short of a time. But you definitely have to knock some rust off, and I wasn't even, at the highest. I couldn't imagine at the highest levels, when some of these guys, if they go down for an injury, how hard they have to work to get back. But we'll save that for golf. We'll be right back. Thanks for sticking around.
Great golf brings people together. At Swing Away Golf Club, the experience is built for golfers and everyone who comes with them. Experience North America's only mechanically actuated virtual green with ball tracking by PuttView, paired with Full Swing Pro 2.0 simulators trusted by Tiger Woods and John Ram. Every swing is captured, every shot is real, and every putt reacts exactly like it would on the course. Serious golfers can dial in their game with tour-level feedback and unmatched realism. And for friends and family, Swing Away offers a comfortable, welcoming space with great food, a full-service bar, and fun, interactive experiences that make it easy for anyone to just jump in and enjoy the moment. Play iconic courses from around the world, share the experience together, and enjoy a place where competition, connection, and atmosphere all come together. Swing Away Golf Club. Practice, play, win.
All right, welcome back to the Clubhouse podcast with Charley Bolak here. We're talking about mistakes, and this is our golf segment. So we have all made plenty of mistakes on the golf course. What I have noticed in my years of playing golf with bunches of different people as a salesman is that some people react to the bad shots better. Everybody hits a bad shot. You know, since I've opened Swing Away, I've watched a lot more of the PGA Tour, and you know, even the best in the world find themselves in the trees, in the rough, in the bunker, in the water. It all starts with a bad shot for the amateur golfer and how they react to it. You will very rarely see the pros try the type of hero shot that you will see me try to take from the middle of the trees at Robert Trent Jones or you know, from the deepest bunker on the course at Bentbrook. And we all do it. It's the classic decision chain, the classic mistake chain, the classic drive one into trouble, refuse to take the medicine, hit your next shot into even worse trouble, you know, get angry, get to the third or fourth shot, depending on if you're in a hazard or not, and just walk up to it, whack it, you know, and then maybe by the fifth shot, you're able to, you know, kind of slow those emotions down, get up to it, make a reasoned, you know, approach shot. But ultimately it ends up in a snowman on the scorecard or worse. And it's one of the most frustrating things we'll ever do, but it's also basically a microcosm, the easiest way to study a decision chain, because it happens so fast, so frequently, and in such real time that, I mean, it would be a psychologist's dream to study, or whoever you know aggregates that type of numbers. They'd love it, because there would be just such a immense sample size of golfers that go out there and do the same thing, rather than saying, okay, that was a bad shot. Well, I'm going to get to this ball. I'm going to look at the damage that one bad shot did, and I'm going to fix it. You know, and if we approach life, business, parenting, and all of it, the way we could approach this golf ball after a bad shot, then, you know, we would all ultimately probably lead better lives. But none of us can make that. Well, very few of us can make that decision. I mean, I even do it on the Sims, and it can happen so fast in indoor golf. You know, you can go from a great round to a 90 because 3 holes happen so fast that within 7 minutes you've gone from even par to 8 over because you got a little upset. So I mean, I tend to these days like try to double down my focus. I get real quiet. If you watch the lunch hour golf at all when we stream it, you know, when I'm doing good and hitting good shots, I'm relaxed, I'm comfortable, I'm talking, I'm explaining what I'm doing, my thought processes. But then after a few, you know, bad shots, bad hole, a few bad outcomes, I get real quiet. I really get real focused, and I can really get pretty down on myself pretty quick. And I think, you know, it's been my experience that I have seen that out of a lot of golfers that I've been paired with over the years. And it's hard not to get into that situation, right? It's, you know, it's frustrating. You put a lot of work in, you know, during the week, whether it's going to the range or going to the sim and knowing your numbers, or however you choose to practice, if you choose to practice, If you're like I used to be, you would just get mad because you didn't go out once a week and shoot a great number. And that's, I think that's a normal feeling and a normal result for amateur golfers, because not everybody has the time or the willingness to go out, put in the work it's going to take to be a really good golfer, and they expect better out of themselves, even though they're not practicing. Just like on the work episode, the guitar story that the guitar instructor kept telling me, I know you're not practicing because your fingers aren't getting more, whatever they called it, and they were right. I, as a kid, saw my whatever hour a week, probably, if that, as a lot of work. I saw that as a big input of my time, and it just, I wasn't getting and to this day I can't play the guitar because it probably takes a little bit more of a time investment than I've ever been willing to put in. So let's take it to signal noise. Noise is the previous shot. Your playing partners, if their buddies heckling you, giving a hard time, the score you think you need, the tucked pin, the hazards, it's the YouTube swing thoughts. I love Bob Does Sports and those guys, but they get in my head sometimes, and I'll just be in a random round of golf and remember one of their shots and just start chuckling or something like that. And sometimes it affects the game, sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time it doesn't. But it is. You've got all this running through your head, and that's the noise. The noise is the desire to prove that you can do this. And the signal is looking where the ball is, what the lie is giving you, where the safe target is, and the shot that you can realistically expect to be able to execute based off of where your game is. It's almost like you're trying to get revenge on the golf course for your bad shot, and it's we all do it. Again, it's not. But it's not the golf course's fault. It's generally, it's not the club's fault, unless you're just hitting something that's not built for your swing or style of golf, or generally, if you're playing a course that would require a different setup of clubs than you ultimately play. And I think that's something a lot of amateur golfers will never do, and I probably never will. Is having different club sets for different conditions or styles of golf. You've got guys that will play different degree drivers based on the tees they're going to play, or the distance of the course they're playing, or the width of the fairways, the length, and first of all, I have one driver that I play, and that's my driver. But ultimately, some guys have tons of different clubs for different conditions, different courses they're going to be, and that's up to the individual. If you want to play just one set of clubs, ultimately, if you want to have these different abilities to hit these different shots, then you're going to have to practice a lot more than the guy that has 71 wedges and says, okay, today this course, it's got some elevated greens, I'm going to bring more of my lofted wedges. Again, I don't do that. I know guys that do, and I see value and benefits in both sides. That's an investment of time and money that I don't want to make, and that's that's one of the overarching themes of the golf segment itself on this podcast, is that you can go as far as you want with it. Some people have more, just natural ability than others. Some people can take a little bit of practice a lot farther than others. But, ultimately the result is that if you're working to improve, unless there is a reason you can't, you will. It's logic, right? It's time, it's repetition, it's not rocket science. I think, there's a level of critical thinking where some people would find a ceiling. And in golf, there's a level of physical ability where people will find a ceiling. But unless you're practicing multiple days a week, and doing all of those things, have the multiple sets of clubs, have the clubs that are fitted to your swing speed and your style, unless you're doing all that, you're gonna plateau. But if you're doing all that, you will see, marginal improvements. You will get to the point of what is it, the law of inverse return, where continuing to work harder and harder and harder will not get you incremental gains anymore, because you've gotten as far as your natural ability is going to allow. But it's, not many people get to that. Not many amateurs get to that, because not many have the time or the willingness to put in the money or the time to make it happen. All right. Well, I think I did get a little carried off of the signal to noise. So the noise, when you're looking over that next shot after a bad shot, generally for me, if I hit a good drive, I will duff my approach. So I would be sitting on it, maybe somewhere from 25 to 80 yards out. And generally these days, I'm not going to be in that bad of trouble. Now, 2 years ago, when I hadn't been playing a lot because of kids and all of that, I hadn't discovered indoor golf yet. I could be looking at a drive that's in the left-hand woods, and there's a very little window to get to the green, and it's just such a low probability of you hitting that shot, as opposed to just chipping out, third, let's just hope to get up and down, just take a bogey and be happy, as opposed to running the risk of having a triple, quadruple, as high as you want to go. The signal is looking over the ball and thinking how best to escape that situation with the least disruption to your score. Just escape this hole. The hole, there's no saving it. Let's just try to not let it kill our round. And if we can live on that, that's to me, ultimately, that's how you break 80, or that's how you get to that even par. It is not necessarily by having these, just incredibly perfect shots that end up 3 inches from the hole. It's, playing consistent where you are playing, getting yourself within 20 feet green in regulation. If you do that, you're gonna have pars all day, and you're gonna roll in a few of those for birdie. There's just, outside of a 3-putt would be a bogey. A good 1-putt would be a birdie, but a solid 2-putt, pars all day. If you can get on or near the green in regulation, you will be putting up decent enough scores. That's good enough on golf.
Here's what people don't tell you about leveling up. If you want to move from this to this, you got to do a whole lot of work in between, like this. You got to keep these places up to keep them ready. A lot of people pay for it, but if you want to have your money working for you, it's elbow grease, baby. Are you ready? If you value hard work, enjoy golf, and want to hear about leveling up, moving, parenting, stuff that I have real world experience with, give us a listen at the Clubhouse podcast. Find us on YouTube or Spotify today. And as always, come and see us at Swing Away Golf Club. Practice, play, win.
Howdy, folks. Thanks for sticking around. If you noticed, different shirt, had a group come in about 10:30. We had a great time. Just wasn't able to get this last segment in. So let's. I've had another day to kind of reflect on things, but then it's not quite as top of mind as it was yesterday either. So let's try to take this home and just kind of to tie it all in. Mistakes happen everywhere. A mistake in business, as long as you own it, you can minimize it. As long as you work to fix what happened in the first place, you fix the immediate need, you fix what caused the disruption in the first place, and then you go to the customer, explain it all, tell them what you've done to protect future deals, and you go on about your life. In my career, maybe only had one customer that was just irrationally upset after something went wrong and was not receptive to me offering, hey, this is what I've done, this is how I'm going to protect it, this is how I'm going to fix it. If you do it that way, if you sandwich it with what you've done, how you're going to fix it, how it's never going to happen again, it's so rare that people aren't understanding, because they put on their clothes the same way we do. They go through the same struggles and challenges that we do. And they know the situation, right? They've been there, they've done that, they've got the t-shirt. All right, so at the beginning of the episode, told you about 2 possible accident chains almost crossing on Broadway. Mine, I can easily trace it back, new house, change routine, kids in the car, I'm tired, no caffeine, not excuses, but after reflection, this is how I got there. It was like, one of those movie sequences or commercials or however it is, where it just stops. It's like, this is how we got ourselves in this situation. I'm not good enough at editing to do something like that, so I'll just talk about it here. How about that? It taught me that good intentions don't create attention. Being busy doesn't change the responsibility in front of you as a driver. Being tired doesn't change it. Moving houses doesn't change it. Thinking about productivity definitely doesn't change it, because that defeats what you're trying to work on in the first place. Productivity is not necessarily keeping more thoughts in motion. It's knowing how to prioritize them into what brings the most value by accomplishing now. How many items can I have on my list before it becomes too many and I'm not effective at any of them because I'm trying to do a little bit of a lot? Parenting, the signal is not always the schedule, the mess, getting everybody out the door. Sometimes the signal is the child standing right in front of you. In golf, it's not always the shot you just ruined or the score you're walking off the green with. It's how you're going to handle that adversity, how you're going to bounce back, and what is your plan to block the noise. Signal can be block the noise. If you think about the functionality of a white noise machine, what is it? It's to block all the other noise. Makes sense. That's how I sleep better. Behind the wheel, the signal is the road. Everything else is noise. We can build a defense, or we can build a better system. We can spend our energy proving that the mistake was understandable, or we can use that energy to make sure that doesn't happen again, right? When something goes wrong, run your own internal investigation. Start with the fact. You can tell your own self a story, You can also go in and investigate your own memories and sometimes come out with a different outcome and different understanding of the situation, So when I was looking at it, what was the first link? We've already talked about it, all those things, and there is no fault to that. I mean, if people were faulted for buying a new house, it would be a tough world. The fault is losing perspective and losing situational awareness of what was going on immediately in front of me while I'm thinking about 18 other things. That is what it boils down to the root cause of the near miss was I did not have my brain ready to be driving, and I was driving. Again, I name it, I own it, I repair what I can. I've offered the beer, I've apologized, I've said, hey, I'm going to be more aware as I'm driving around, our new city, because there are people who choose to enjoy that hobby of cycling in Homewood. And as a responsible driver on the public roads, it is my responsibility to be aware of where they could be and do my best to proceed as safely as possible. All right, let's see. I mean, that's really that. I think that's really it. Other than how you respond to adversity, to these challenges, day after day will define the human being you will wake up one morning and realize that you are. That's a great place to end. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time here on the Clubhouse. This is Charley Bolak. Take care.